Jananjana Salakaya Chaksulamilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhuttale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadatitsa Pandantikam Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 2, Text number 19. Yata Gadam Viryatamam Upayaktam Yadrichchaya Ajanato Apiyatmagunam Kuryan Mantro Api Udaritaha Yatagadam Viryatamam Upayuktam Yadrichchaya Ajanato Piyatmagunam Kuryam Mantro Piyudaritaha. Just like Agadam, medicine, Viryatamam, very powerful, Upayuktam, properly taken, Yadrichchaya, somehow or other, Ajanata, by a person without knowledge, Api, even, Atmagunam, its own potency, Kuryat, manifests, Mantra, the Hare Krishna mantra, Api, also, Udarita, chanted. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. If a person unaware of the effective potency of a certain medicine takes the medicine, or is forced to take it, it will act even without his knowledge, because its potency does not depend on the patient's understanding. Similarly, even though one does not know the value of chanting the holy name of the Lord, if one chants knowingly or unknowingly, the chanting will be very effective. Purport. In the Western countries where the Hare Krishna movement is spreading, learned scholars and other thoughtful men are realizing its effectiveness. For example, Dr. J. Stilson Judha, a learned scholar, has been very much attracted to this movement because he has actually seen that it is turning hippies addicted to drugs into pure Vaishnavas who voluntarily become servants of Krishna and humanity. Even a few years ago, such hippies did not know the Hare Krishna mantra, but now they are chanting it and becoming pure Vaishnavas. Thus, they are becoming free from all sinful activities such as illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling. This is practical proof of the effectiveness of the Hare Krishna movement, which is supported in this verse. One may or may not know the value of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, but if one somehow or other chants it, he will immediately be purified, just as one who takes a potent medicine will feel its effects, regardless of whether he takes it knowingly or unknowingly. Vanchakalpaturu Vaishya Kripa Sindhubi Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So we are again hearing the narration of the life of Ajamil and the great benefit which comes as a result of chanting the holy names of the Lord. Here it is mentioned that it is as effective as a potent medicine. When taking medicine, the doctor may know the value of the medicine, but the patient really may not. Rather, the patient has some faith on the doctor. And as a result of his faith on the doctor, he takes the medicine and it has its effect. So, in a sense, the Krishna consciousness process is like that. Ado Shraddha Tatha Sadhu Bhajana Kriya. Bhajana Kriya is the process by which we take the medicine. It is the method of purifying ourselves through bhajan, through sadhana, by principles or regulations which we receive from the spiritual master. But even before embarking on the process of bhajana kriya, there is shraddha. So the shraddha comes from sadhu sangha. In other words, first of all, initial shraddha comes in the form of various activities. Just like Haridas Thakur mentions, for example, chanting, hearing the chanting party. This is one of the reasons why Harinam Sankirtan is very important. Unfortunately, we are not doing very much Harinam Sankirtan here, but perhaps that will begin in the not too distant future. It would be very advisable. There's no reason why this temple cannot do Harinam Sankirtan, except for the fact that you are not doing it. You could do it. You could all go out on a certain day and chant in the public, because the effect of that would be to purify the atmosphere. And it is also the Yuga Dharma. It is recommended by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. If we want to see the Krishna consciousness movement spread, then we're going to have to do those things which Lord Chaitanya instructed. Primary activity is to expand the glories of the Lord's holy names. So that we are now doing through book distribution. Prabhupada said that book distribution, for wider Sankirtan, book distribution is required. So why is it Harinam Sankirtan? Because everything in the books is simply the expansion of the glorification of Krishna's holy names. So this is the beginning. Then we can also add the chanting parties. And these two activities combined together will certainly induce faith. And Prabhupada says that they simply touch a book. By touching the book, by seeing the book, they develop faith. And this is why we give people the books. When we're selling the books, we put the books in their hand. It actually increases their faith. That's what happens. They touch the book, and then they want to buy the book, or they want to give the donation for the book and take it home. So, just as when one goes to the doctor, first of all, one goes to the doctor, and because of some faith in the doctor, one agrees to follow a certain regimen. So the devotees have to realize that when people receive books, when they become affected by our preaching, the result is that they will come to associate with us. And if we are acting in an exemplary manner, then people will have faith in what we instruct. This verse, Apani achare keha na kare prachar karena keha na karena achar. Achar prachar namera karaha duikar tumi sarva guru tumi jagatera ari. This word achar means a person's behavior, and it is very important because we see in today's world that the leaders don't behave properly. And therefore, even though they may occupy very big positions, and even though they may be elected leaders, nobody is interested to follow them. If what they say doesn't please the senses of those who are their followers, they reject them. And a person is really elected because of his promise to please people's senses, not because of his proper behavior. In the past, the leaders were accepted as leaders because of their ideal character. So some people behave properly, but they don't speak well. And others speak well, but they don't behave properly. So on the other hand, one who acts very nicely, who speaks well, as well as who acts properly, he can become a spiritual master. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has ordered Amara Gai Gudahara Tari Desh Yade Deki Tari Kaha Krishna Upadesh. He has ordered all the devotees to become spiritual masters, to become teachers. So when people come here, if they meet such ideally behaving devotees who also can explain the philosophy very nicely, the result will be that they will become inspired to practice bhajana kriya. How do you learn? By the example of others. How does a child learn? It's like we see these little children now are growing big enough to dance. Where did they learn how to dance? Now, of course, they may have that dancing tendency in them anyway. Prabhupada said it's natural when you hear music to dance, but really the way they're dancing, they learn from their parents. So when new people come here, if what they see is ideal, they'll follow. On the other hand, if what they see is very conditional, then they'll think that's what spiritual life is. So basically, now that we are pushing our preaching more, try to stay away, now that we are pushing our preaching more, we should expect that people are going to come. So it's very important what they see. They must see an ideal example. If they don't, then it will be very difficult. Just as we see that a doctor, if he doesn't practice his medicine properly, doesn't prepare the medicine properly, doesn't administer the medicine properly, so many things, then it may not have the desired result. So if the preacher is not properly qualified, if he's not, doing so many other things, and even though what we have is wonderful, it's very powerful medicine, Hare Krishna mantra, Prabhupada's books, the deities, but if it's not administered properly, it may have an opposite effect. Just like we hear that milk touched by the lips of a serpent becomes poisonous. Similarly, if you associate with someone who's not a proper devotee, and you hear from him the philosophy of Hare Krishna mantra, it may have a different effect altogether. Sometimes book distributors, or rather sometimes people who got a book would write letters to Prabhupada complaining. And Prabhupada would say to them that it's not the fault of the book, but it's the fault of the person who sold you the book. So, and Prabhupada used to say then that our book distributors have to be so expert that they can pass the books in such a way that people actually appreciate the books and want to read them. So, in any case, even one may not understand if one is in a proper mood. Let's see, he can get the benefit if he has some faith. Actually, the issue is faith. Now, how faith develops it is also due to piety. That same verse. Yesham tvantakatam papam jananam punyakarmanam te dvanda mohanir mukta bhajanti mam dritavrataha. Unless one has the background of pious activities and has more or less stopped sinful life, the resolute determination will not be there for bhakti. So, someone who is sinful cannot associate with the Lord. Only a proper person qualified can associate with the Lord. And the holy name of the Lord and the Lord are not different. So it's not just anyone who can chant Hare Krishna. Well, when we go on the street, we chant. Some people start chanting with us, but some people don't chant. And some people become very angry because they're very sinful. Now, in the case that's mentioned here, Ajamil, he was very sinful. He was very sinful. Still, he got some special mercy. What is the qualification that Ajamil had? Vishnu does. Yeah. His Purva Samskars. He had Purva Samskar. He had very good past impressions. That's mentioned. As we have quoted, Yesham tvantakatam papam jananam punyakarma. He had this punyakarma. He had very good pious activities from the beginning of his life. He was doing service, assisting his father in puja. So sometimes devotees may wonder if there's any use to sending the children in Gurukul. But from the example of Ajamil, we see there's so much use. Because he has a Gurukul education. He must have had a Gurukul education, because in those days, that's the only kind of education there was Gurukul. So he got a Gurukul education. So even though he fell down to very sinful behavior, that Gurukul education saved him. So certainly there is benefit to having the children in the Gurukul. Even no matter how long it may be, it will be valuable. So we should realize that and that's why Prabhupada established it. And the different people in the sociologists have stated that the deciding factor in whether or not a religious movement will survive is in how they are able to educate their children. If they cannot properly educate their children, then it is very difficult for the religious movement to survive. So, Prabhupada planted the seed, you can say. He planted many seeds. He created such an important and established Lord Chaitanya's movement. We should understand that we have been entrusted with the most important responsibility in existence, at least in the existence of this whole planet. The members of this society are very heavily burdened with a very, very heavy responsibility. The whole sampradaya has, basically placed within the hands of Srila Prabhupada the future of Lord Chaitanya's teachings. And Prabhupada has entrusted those teachings to us. This movement has been entrusted into our hands. So how we take care of this movement, therefore, is so important for the future history of this planet. This movement, Prabhupada said, is meant to be written down in history for having saved the world. Now, whether or not that happens is going to depend entirely on our behavior and actions. So we should think like this, not in a narrow-minded, kripana mentality that, simply for my own good. This nice verse of Prahlad Maharaj, Prayena deva munaya svamukti kama maunam charanti vijane padartha nishta naitam vihaya kripanam vimuksha ego nanyatvad asya sharanam brahmato nupshase. My dear Lord Nrsingadev, I see that there are many saintly persons indeed, but they are interested only in their own deliverance. Not caring for the big cities and towns, they go to the Himalayan mountains or the forests to meditate with vows of silence, mona. They are not interested in saving others. As for me, however, I do not wish to be liberated alone, leaving aside all these poor fools and rascals. I know that without Krishna consciousness, without taking shelter at your lotus feet, one cannot be happy. Therefore, I wish to bring them back at the shelter of your lotus feet. This is from the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the teachings of Prahlad Maharaj. So, Prahlad Maharaj's point is that simply to think of our own deliverance is not his mood. Most people don't even think of their own deliverance, they only think of their own sense gratification. But Prahlad Maharaj herein states that, never mind those people, but even those who only think of their own liberation, he said they're simply selfish. They're also kripana. They're also misers. Who is a really merciful person? And that has been described in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, where it mentions that those who distribute the glories of Krishna, they are actually buddhidajanaha. They are very, very munificent. When Maharaj Patraparuda went to when he went for the association of Lord Chaitanya, he quoted this verse, Tavakatam Ritam, Tapta Jivanam. That Tavakatam Ritam, your pastimes are glorified by the munis and the sages. They are the most wonderful of all things. and everyone loves to hear them. Then he said, so anyone who therefore distributes these pastimes, who preaches this Krishna consciousness movement, is Buddhida Janaha. He is the most munificent of all persons. Generally, munificence is judged by giving money, charity, this type of thing. But the statement is there that no, the best and most munificent thing is to distribute Krishna consciousness. So Prahlad Maharaj and those who follow in his footsteps, they're in this mood. That I'm not interested to go back to Godhead on my own. But I want to go back to Godhead taking all of these fools and rascals with me. Not that Prahlad Maharaj says, I want to take only the good persons. He says, I'm prepared to take everyone. Everyone is good. Everyone is good because everyone has relationship with you. Actually, everyone has relationship with Krishna. Right? Some know it and some don't. Some admit to it and some deny it. But a devotee of the Lord, he sees Vidya Vinaya Sampani, Brahmana Gavani Hastani, Suni Chayeva Sapakicha, Pandita Samadarshan. He sees equally all living entities. Not just humans, but even on the lower levels. He sees everyone as having relationship with Krishna. And so he vigorously preaches Krishna consciousness. He tries so hard to make this movement successful. So there are many things required for making this movement successful. It is not only a question of going out and distributing books, just like the army, it is said, moves on its belly. So, for example, we have to also have prasadam prepared. We have to worship the deities. All of these things are part of the Sankirtan movement. And we should see how much we can sacrifice, how much we can do for the sake of Krishna. And this will make the chanting successful. Simply chanting is the beginning. It will change, Prabhupada says, it will change the nature of a person, just like he says, so many hippies. Not the hippies and others also. They just heard the chanting and they began chanting. They didn't know fully what it was. But gradually, as they chanted, the ignorance cleared away. Krishna Surya Sam Maya Haya Andhakar Yahan Krishna Tahan Nahi Maya Adhikar. When there is the sun of Krishna which appears on the horizon, the darkness of Maya or ignorance is dispelled. Just as when the morning sun rises, all darkness is dispelled. So when one begins to chant, then one's consciousness clears. And when the clearing stage has been achieved, then one can understand actually how to serve nicely. Now we are doing very mechanically, out of force. That force is called out of vidhi, out of the rules. We are told, get up, do this, do this, do this. So impelled by fear, to some extent, of what may happen if I don't do it, we are doing various types of services. But actually that is not our natural mood. The natural mood is when actually Krishna Prema is there. When spontaneous devotional mood is there. And that is within everyone. It is within the living entity, this Prema, or love for Krishna. So as we chant and do more and more service, then our natural spontaneous love for Krishna will be awakened. Otherwise now it is a struggle. If you find Krishna consciousness a struggle, that's because you are not yet on the spontaneous platform. So we have to push harder. You have to push. One way or the other you'll struggle. If you either struggle to be Krishna conscious or you struggle for material existence. Now which would you rather do? What is the value of struggling for material existence? That hard struggle for material existence is being done by every living entity. If you're going to have to struggle anyway, you might as well struggle to be a pure devotee. At least then you will get out completely from this whole network of Maya. So, examples like Ajamil, teachings of the Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is about the Bhagavata. The whole point of this is Mahapurana. Why is it the Mahapuranam? Why is it the topmost Puranam? Because it's talking about the Mahabhagavats. Why is this literature glorified above all other literature? Because it's the history of the greatest personalities. Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, Ambarish Maharaj, the Pandavas, they're all Sukadev Goswami, Parikshit Maharaj. All of these extraordinary persons are being glorified here. And this is the history. Actually, Mahabharata means the history of the world. This world was called Bharatvarsa. Not only India was called Bharatvarsa, but the whole earthly planet. When the British came, they called it India. They took away the word Bharatvarsa. India has no meaning. Bharatvarsa was the meaning of, it had meaning because it was based on Maharaj Bharata, the great devotee. In other words, this was the planet that he ruled. And he was so wonderful a ruler that the whole planet was named after him. You can't imagine, that this planet would be called Clinton Varsha. Who cares for such things? These people are, it's like a flashing light, firefly, compared to the sun. The leaders of the world today are no more than just like fireflies. In darkness, the firefly may appear very bright. So in the darkness of Kali Yuga, anyone comes into power and they seem to be a bright star. But as soon as the real bright star comes, as soon as a great personality comes, then it's such a great contrast. When you compare Srila Prabhupada and these leaders of the world, then we see you can't even compare them. Like you can't, to try to compare a firefly with the sun, it's unthinkable. You can take hundreds of planet Earths and they can be burned up in the heat of the sun in a second if they come near the sun. What to speak of a little firefly in one little inch of space in the middle of one city on this planet. So the position of persons like Prabhupada and all of the Mahabhagavatas who are described in the Bhagavatam is that extraordinary. No one will remember the names of all of these persons who come and go. We may have some modern history books which write their names down, but they will not be recalled in the future. But the great persons of the Bhagavatam are recalled. So this literature is so important. And it is the duty of everyone to study this literature on a daily basis. That's why Prabhupada said to attend a morning class every day. So you must do this. And if for some reason you can't come on a particular morning, then you should make it up by reading. You should not miss association with the Bhagavatam. Because the Bhagavatam is full of the Bhagavatas. And this is the way of becoming purified. These are the potent factors of our spiritual life. Alright, so we'll stop here. Anyone have any questions or comments? Yes, Vyapi Prabhu. Yeah. Even Srila Prabhupada, Vyapi Prabhu's mentioning that here it mentions even forcefully, if one is forced to chant, it will have effect. And he said that, sometimes there's an aversion if you're forced to do something, but many religions have spread by force. Prabhupada himself said that. He said that the time may come one day when the Krishna consciousness movement will be controlling. The leaders will be Krishna conscious. And he said at that time they may go out and they will approach someone and they will say, chant Hare Krishna. And if the person refuses, Prabhupada said, So, certainly that is not the time now. We don't do that now, and neither we would particularly publicize this fact, because some religions are accused of this, that they're fanatical. But the fact is that somehow or other, if someone doesn't chant Hare Krishna, their whole life is inauspicious. And somehow if they come into contact with Krishna, their life... Madhavananda Prabhu was giving the example of a rat who was, what was it? There was a candlelight on the altar. Eating the ghee from the ghee lamp, and he was he got burned. So because he was burned, he put up, his hands went up, this rat on the altar, and he was spinning around. And then he died. And in his next life, he became a devotee of the Lord. He said some queen. He became a devotee of the Lord because the Lord took it that he was doing kirtan. During the arati ceremony, he had done kirtan for the Lord, and so he got deliverance. So that's forcefully, certainly. It's a forceful situation. But one way or the other. But we should be very careful. We should understand now we have come voluntarily. And we should be very careful to at least force ourselves. Just because it's voluntary doesn't mean you can be slack with yourself. If you say you don't like anyone to force you, well, at least you have to force yourself. Because if you don't, the senses are all working forcefully. The senses and the mind are very forceful in demanding what they want. So if you're not equally forceful in trying to control the senses and mind, then how can you practice yoga? What does yoga mean except to forcefully control? And the result, if you don't do it, is that you will fall down. Even in Vrindavan, where you chant Hare Krishna in Vrindavan, it's 1,000 times more powerful than chanting anywhere else. But if you fall down, if you break the principles in Vrindavan, it's 1,000 times more sinful. And Prabhupada said, therefore we see so many monkeys in Vrindavan who were sadhus, but they fell down. They wanted to enjoy illicit sex in the dawn, so they took their birth as monkeys. That's certainly a great fall down. Still, they have some facility because of living in a dham. Yes, Vyapi.
Sometimes, depending on when you have children, or sometimes you get rules for the kids when they start getting older. They say, well, they're forced to do something thing. Because of that, they just have so many problems.
Yeah, I don't think that the problems came on account of force, because forcefulness can be applied in a loving way. If they had problems, I would say it was not due to the fact that they were forced, but they were forced improperly. In other words, parents can be very forceful in a loving way with a child, and the child will appreciate that. So if there's not sufficient love given, but only forcefulness, that's unbearable. Then it's like prison life. But if one is forceful, but at the same time very loving and concerned, I don't think the children would ever, in the Gurukul, would ever in the future say, I was forced unfairly. It's just like sometimes Prabhupada would receive a letter where a Sankirtan devotee would say that, I feel like when I go out in Sankirtan, it puts me in Maya. And Prabhupada said, Sankirtan never puts anybody in Maya. So Gurukul, proper Gurukul education will not be something bad. It will only be good. Now, if there are other things, if there's not sufficient loving concern given to the children in so many ways, that will cause the problem. But making the children sit down and regulating them, now chant at this time, get up, go to arati, take your bath, eat your prasadam. These are things that every parent does. Go to school, right? Eat your food. Every parent forces their children. I was forced to go to school. I was forced to eat my meals. I was forced to take a shower. Every one of us was. I don't think how cruel they were, because there was enough love also given to balance it. So as long as the teachers are very loving in their way, then it's nice. Then nobody will object. And nowadays anyway, this is another thing, is that this age is such that this is the age of complaints. This is the age of the underdog. This is the age of the abused. You can file a suit in this country for anything now. A child can sue his parents. No one could have imagined such a thing. But now, if the parents are a little too strict, the child could probably, if they can get a lawyer, they can afford to get a lawyer. They can sue their parents for being too strict with them and get different parents. They can do it in America. Anything is possible here if you have money. Krishna.
So, more kind of practical question. You were saying about the behavior of the devotees, but many times you come up with cases, someone from outside will come and tell you that this and such person behaved in such a way with me because of which I felt very bad.
This is what?
Like some member of the congregation comes with a complaint, and they will come up with saying that even though you people say so many nice things in your lectures and you preach like this, but this is the way some people have behaved with us. So you have a problem when you know that these things have happened. So how do you convince such a person to reestablish his?
Prabhupada said that, yes, it's true that the behavior of the devotees is not always perfect because it is like a hospital. And in a hospital, you don't expect that every person residing in the hospital is in perfect health. So this is a spiritual hospital. And so here we find people who are making an effort. But in making the effort, they may not always be perfect. But those who are more advanced, the doctors, they tolerate the problems and they go on applying the medicine. At least they're making an effort. They're coming here and trying to. We don't deny that the devotees make mistakes. The devotees do make mistakes. And if someone says, well, but I don't see this behavior outside, but I don't see any attempt outside to even become Krishna conscious. At least those who are here are making an attempt to be Krishna conscious, so even if in the attempt they make some mistakes, it's better than the materialists who make no effort at all. And who also make mistakes. It's not as if people don't act cruelly outside. They're just as callous, they're just as inconsiderate, they're just as puffed up, etc., etc., etc. But they have no spiritual position. Like that. Alright, let us stop here. We'll finish here now. Any other question? No. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Shri Radha Nila Madhav ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Go Premanandi.